Welcome to Deep Pockets with Petra Söderling, the show about government and innovation. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and the music created by a New Orleans jazz icon Leroy Jones. Find this and other Leroy Jones tunes wherever you get your music. This week, the last week of February 2025, I'm recording 2 episodes. One is on the topic of how deep tech fields all around the world need international talent, and the other, this one, is for that talent to understand what users need as accurately and profoundly as possible. You could call these themes immigration and DEI, but you'd immediately be firing up a political food fight, which is not the purpose of this show. Instead of flat slogans, I want to go deeper into the human aspect of creating, selling, and using emerging technologies. My guest is Juliette De La Rie. She's a strategic communications and public affairs expert and a community builder in the quantum industry. Juliette is certified in ethics, well-being, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and in psychological science. She is the founder and CEO of Colorful Matter, a company providing, quote, colorful services from strategy to implementation, end of quote. I will let her explain what this means in more detail in a moment. Juliette De La Rie has worked at organizations such as Heart Hyperloop in Rotterdam, the European Hyperloop Development Program, and most recently as the head of communications at Quantum Delta, the Netherlands National Ecosystem for Excellence in Quantum Innovation. Welcome to Deep Pockets, Juliette.
Thank you so much, Petra. I'm really happy to be having this conversation with you and excited to be here.
Okay, so, we met a few weeks ago at the opening ceremony of the United Nations International Year of Quantum, which was held at UNESCO's headquarters in Paris. And if I remember correctly, I think we were in the same WhatsApp group that you had created last summer, 2024, for Quantum Meets in Amsterdam. And in that group, there was some discussion about meetups or also in Paris. And you just whipped up this new WhatsApp group for quantum meetups in Paris, and somehow magically you got over 100 people in the group. And then we all, not all 100, but some of us met that evening in a bistro nearby, which you just randomly organized. So that was pretty amazing. But I did talk to you earlier in the day as well, and you were so full of energy and so fearless and so dedicated to your message that I really wanted to have you on the show. So my first question to all of my guests is, how did you become the person you are today?
Right. Well, that's a great question. And first of all, I have to say thank you. It's humbling to hear you say this. And also being called fearless to me personally is a really big compliment. And in relation to your question, I think that is because I haven't always been that person per se. I haven't always been fearless. I was actually a very shy kid and only managed to sort of get over that like well into my adult life. So yeah, how did I become the person I am today? Actually, that's very much intertwined with the story of my career as well, I would say. So I have always been somewhat entrepreneurial. Like, for example, as a kid, I would call up the local newspaper to find others who would also be willing to open up a dance school in my village and things like that, right? So, those examples would come up. But yeah, who I am today and the Paris examples you gave actually have everything to do with what I see as my purpose in life, I would say, which is spreading happiness and making others see their own beauty. I know that's very specific, but I do try to be that intentional about everything I do. And then the other thing is, let's say, sort of my greatest love, which so far is actually true in all aspects of life. But this is really the quest for the unknown and sort of finding answers to the bigger questions in life. And that curiosity and love of learning, is what led me to also be part of the quantum space today. So I can explain a bit more on that by sharing how like my life and career developed. Mm-hmm. So and I'm getting a little bit personal here, but yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
became a mom when I was quite young. I was only 20 years old when I had my first child, and I now have a 17-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. And so, yeah, sorry, making this a little bit personal from in the beginning, but basically when the oldest one first went to school, this is when I started to notice that part of that was judged a little bit. I started really sort of seeing biases people held towards that. So um, like specifically when my son started, he's a fast learner and he did quite well in school, and then I started seeing how that got some two obviously surprised reactions. And then this is me being a young mom of mixed kids, and by that time I was also single. I was together with their dad for 8 years, and by the time we split up, and then in an environment where the other parents were together, jointly providing for their families, and also 20 years older approximately than I was at that time. And this is well, now I find it a little bit sad and a little bit childish, but that really drove me to prove people wrong. So I really wanted to
Wow.
show them I will do better than all of you. I'm not proud of that. Also, not towards myself, but that is what I did. And that's how I really started to, yeah, work hard, but also approach my career a little bit in a bit of an opportunistic manner, I would say, almost really taking the opportunities that were there. And it was not at all about my happiness or what really interests me or what I wanted to do. I had been part of a lot of different industries, mostly always in marketing communications related roles and public affairs roles, but across a lot of industries. And then as soon as I sort of yeah, let's say managed to reach my like initial goals that I had there, I was relatively soon doing quite well, thankfully. That's when the thought came about. Actually, I'm not happy. I'm not in spaces where I meet people that, let's say, are like-minded. And because I was working so hard, my social life was also very much intertwined with my professional life, and I just didn't feel like I really belonged or was having the conversations that really interest me and things like that. And that's when I started to sort of for the first time in my adult life really think about, okay, who am I and what do I care about? And then the first thing that came to mind was how for as long as I could remember at a very early age, I would also be very frustrated about what am I doing here? Why don't I understand what this universe is? Like very big questions. I don't get
Mm.
it. What is this all for? And so I thought, let me look into where we're at with that. And so I started doing some like desk research, and that's how I first basically ran into quantum physics, and that became an obsession, like a true obsession. All my spare time was dedicated to exploring that, and not even really in relation to tech, but just in really in the quantum mechanics part. And what do we know? What knowledge can I gain so that I can think about these questions myself to really have a profound knowledge base? Anyway, long story short, at some point in my career, I was already in the tech space. I was already a lot happier, and then this job to work for the Dutch National Quantum Strategy came along, and I really, because it was such a distant world to me. I had never actually thought that there would be a space for me there. I sort of idealized it a little bit. I just thought maybe I could visit CERN one day. That would be fantastic, but not really a career in this space. And then this opportunity came about. Yeah, and that worked out. So this is well, more than 2.5 years ago. I actually became part of the quantum community. And in relation to the introduction that you just gave, for me, with my background coming into this space, I really for the first time felt that I really actually belonged somewhere. I met so many people with the same type of love for this topic, with the same enthusiasm. Like it was really, to me, it felt like a community. But I also saw that it wasn't the case for everyone. And then, so yeah, the examples that you gave, such as with these WhatsApp groups and the meetups, that's just
Mm.
all from a base of my, well, love and being super grateful to get to be part of this. And I want to give that back. So yeah, you have to overcome some of your personal challenges. Also, me being a little bit shy, but just being part of this space completely eliminates that for me. Yeah.
Wow, Juliet, oh my gosh, I'm blown away. I'm tear-eyed a little bit, actually, to be honest
Oh
here. I
my
wish I
God.
could go back to tell young Juliet that you're not alone. It's okay. I was also a young mom. I was 23 when I had my
No
son,
way.
but
Oh,
I didn't have any bias. And when you said
yeah.
that you received judgment for being
Yeah.
young mom in the Netherlands,
Yeah.
my bias kicked in. I'm like, in the Netherlands? No, they don't have any bias in the
Yeah.
Netherlands. Like,
Exactly.
so I had bias towards that.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually,
so, oh wow.
I didn't know that you were also a young mom. That's actually really nice. And this is also, I think, a really good example. Sorry, but I don't want to go into that too deep. But we find commonalities, right? That we
Yeah,
might have on a personal level that will
yeah,
connect you so much more than actually just having a professional common ground or a professional interests in relation to each other.
absolutely.
And
And
that
I
is, yeah,
also I got curious about quantum
yeah,
in the first phase about 20 years ago. So also maybe around the same age as you are now, and
exactly.
just about quantum mechanics and just about how does the world work? Like
Yeah,
what is it built of? How does everything stick together? Why is
yeah,
this thing green and this thing
yeah,
is yellow? Like what does it all mean? I
exactly.
did exactly, and we're not alone. I know other young women who did the same.
Yes, and we're definitely
And
not alone. Yeah,
And so listeners can't see it, but we're both wearing turtlenecks. We have the same JBL
yeah, right.
Quantum headset. So by coincidence, it
Yeah,
wasn't designed.
there's a
So
lot of
so great.
commonalities there, actually.
Yes,
Yeah, and you know
yes,
what, with relation to what you're saying now, like these bigger questions, I thought when I entered the quantum space, yes, I'm finally going to discuss these topics. Never actually realized that sort of the physicists that I have been following, whose work I've been following, that they wouldn't be as open per se to discussing all those questions for very obvious reasons, of course. But
yeah,
yeah, still there are plenty people who love to also apply this, of course, outside of yeah,
yeah.
well, the set paths.
Okay, I have a list of questions. Let's get back to it
Yeah,
because we have a limited amount of time. So
definitely.
that your story was just mind blowing, so inspiring, really, really inspiring.
Thank you so much.
But I want to go back to being an entrepreneur. So leaving your job and becoming an entrepreneur,
Yeah,
especially one that promotes something as intangible like community building, sense of belonging, fulfillment,
yeah.
everything that you just described is very bold. It is admirable. So you must have really felt that this is something that an emerging tech field like quantum really needs, and it needs it now. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do indeed feel very strongly about that actually. So there's a couple of sides to that, right? So first of all, I think in emerging tech such as quantum, we are developing industries that potentially and likely will have a massive impact on society. And if that's the case and you're working on this now, you should be aware of how you actually also describe that society and of the part you have to play there. So let's say, is that the society that you identify with? Is that Europe? Is that the US? Is that the global north? Or should you expect this tech to have a global impact? And that being the case, of course, if you're part of creating this, you obviously have a part to play in making sure that that impact is positive, not just positive for some, and definitely doesn't come at the cost of others. So I strongly believe that if you want to make that happen, like really thinking about why am I actually eventually doing this? What is the end goal here? Then let's say you have to think about that equal impact and the way to reach that that seems distant, that can seem very difficult. How do you do such a thing, right? We can't control it now. Sometimes we don't even know where the tech is really going or what applications we will be developing, for example. What you can do is influence the way you are developing that tech. So this is actually proven, but also you might think it makes sense that the more diverse voices you include in your organization, in your tech development, throughout all parts, the more perspectives you're going to cover, and the more like creative and comprehensive solutions you are actually going to deliver. This also goes for the products that you're building. And this is exactly where often in the tech space, it also becomes a little bit difficult because, of course, you have a lot of young companies, startups with limited resources, and their mindset is, okay, we have to move ahead. Like this, of course, knowing this field, there's investors involved, etc. You have to move ahead. So you have to make quick decisions, and you have to sort of do what's most obvious. And then in terms of making your company, for example, more diverse, and then also making that diversity work by creating inclusive environments, that seems to not really be a priority. Well, if you don't do that, you're actually missing out. You're like, not just today, you're not just not making the impact you should now, but also you're not serving your eventual users and your eventual markets as best, because you're leaving markets untapped. If you're not basically creating products that serve all different markets, then somebody else will step in and do that, right? But I would say, especially like that being the case, you solve a lot of the issues actually that you're trying to overcome time-wise by getting those diverse voices in, and it's really not as difficult as it's often perceived to be. A lot of the times people don't know where to start. It seems like there is a little bit of a hurdle, and that is something that I really want to sort of lower that barrier, right? For companies to get engaged, to get started, to be informed, because that's where it all starts. You have to know, like, how is this actually impacting my my organization today? And then there are sort of, I mean, it's not a quick fix, definitely not, but there are very simple steps that you can take today to start doing better and to immediately have a little bit of a better impact. And that's sort of the part that I wanna play there. And then also, like you mentioned, and this is very correct. These are sort of intangible concepts of belonging and happiness in the workspace, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, a little less tangible, more tangible, but still. But you do actually implement those. So let's say besides a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, that's super clear. But aspects like belonging and happiness, you can incorporate those into the very tangible processes throughout your organization, into all the work you do. And then for me personally, I, for example, offer strategic communications advice, and I work in projects like that. And that is entirely, to me, this is my approach, entirely intertwined with community building, because whether you call that your ecosystem or your stakeholders, you are trying to position yourself within a community. And the approach I take there, which we just touched upon a little bit, is the personal one, laying a foundation for great personal connections, being a connector in your space, and then positioning yourself from there. Because from those foundation of personal connection, that is the biggest catalyst to me for success in business, in doing business together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So important. And I always say as well, like, people say, oh, this technology is going to do this and that technology. Technology isn't doing anything. People are doing things with the technology.
Absolutely.
So you need the people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to go more into your company. So you do offer a lot of free resources on your website, colorfulmatter.eu.
Yeah.
And I actually took one of your courses. It's
great.
the one on implicit bias.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's not so great. I'll tell you what happened. So I did your course. It's a 30-minute course on implicit bias. Mm-hmm. And then within that course, you mentioned that you have additional resources on your website. So I did the Harvard test. So there's a link to Harvard's website where there are other tests there. So I did the test on implicit bias between male and female, career and family. And just as a background, I've been a feminist for as long as I can remember. I was the chairwoman at 25 with a 2-year-old kid, by the way. I was the chairwoman of the Finnish Women's Party, for heaven's sakes. And even I got the result from this Harvard survey that I have moderate to implicit bias to group male with career and female with family. So I was devastated. I couldn't believe it. And I thought actually that the result was because at the beginning of the test, I hesitated a bit, and it's time-based because I didn't know how the test worked. So I did another implicit bias test, and this time it was on women and men and science and liberal arts. And again, it showed that I have a moderate implicit bias to link men with science and women with liberal arts. And I was pretty shocked. And to be honest, I got angry. So do you see this? Is this a typical behavior? Because I was so angry. I was angry at myself,
Right.
angry at the test, angry at the world.
Yeah. So to answer that, in short, yes, that is typical. But yeah, so it's typical because it proves the point exactly, right? You got angry because you didn't know. And that's the entire thing with biases. I had the same experience, though. I also, of course, took those tests. And this is why I'm included them in my training, because I was actually expecting that my results would end up all the way on the other side of the spectrum, where I have not the expected bias at all, but really would be on the. That's what I expected naively, because I had the same type of results. There was definitely a moderate bias in basically all cases to some extent. And it hurts, right? You think, is this right? Well, yeah, it is actually correct. The test is very well designed. I was also quite, happy about what they did there. But yeah, it makes you angry. It makes you for me, I was a little bit disappointed in myself at first, but it proves the point of that you actually have something to get to work with. And it also demonstrates the exact point with biases, which is you do not control them, right? So I would say, as an organization, thinking you do not need to take action because you already care and you may already have some diversity on board. It isn't true, but it's still very often the case that that's how it goes. And as you know, because you follow the training, I provide a practical process that anyone can use to tackle biases. So it doesn't require you to change them at once, because you can't do that instantly, but you can prevent the impact from the biases of happening. So that's why it's so important that, we get informed, we become familiar with this. And specifically, if you're in a leadership role, or let's say you're an HR manager, or I would say all of us, but specifically if you manage a team, you have to make sure that you are informed about this and you know how to deal with it, right? Because if you just accept, I think a lot of us are there, right? Okay, biases, yeah, that's the thing. I have it. Okay, sure. That is not enough. If you are aware of the biases you have, and even just the simple steps of how to start tackling it, right? Building sort of mechanisms to prevent impact into your any type of decision making, that can already make such a huge difference, right? If I can, there's an example that maybe I use in the training as well. I'm not entirely sure, but that I sometimes use, which is imagine that, for example, you're an investigative journalist, right? And you're reporting on a story and you want to do an as good as possible job. Do you then turn to the person that is right next to you, right? Maybe the one that is screaming the loudest for your intention, but anybody in your circle? Or do you talk to as many different people as you can and then build your story from there? And that's just, it's obvious, right? It's not even a question how you would do that. And that is the exact thing with diversity and making diversity work. You get a better result, a better overall product, a more creative solution, let's say. And this makes any organization more resilient. So, to say it's typical, And there's something to do about that. Don't be angry anymore because you now know what to do.
That's wonderful. Great example.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question. Leave us off with something that you are excited about, something that makes you happy right now.
Yeah, that's a very easy one for me, actually, because what makes me very happy right now and what has been making me very happy for the past year and a half or so is having my kid's little sister as an active part of my life and seeing them with her. So this is not my child, their sister. This is the daughter of my ex, their father and his wife, and I'm lucky enough to have a fantastic situation there, and they share their daughter with me a little bit. So she comes over, sleeps here on some weekends, and that just makes me incredibly happy because it's such a beautiful, let's say, a little bit out of the ordinary relationship that brings a lot of joy to my family. But if you
That's
don't mind, Petra, if
wonderful.
we have time, can I ask you the same thing?
What makes me happy?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Well, these podcasts make me very happy. But it's Friday, and I live in the south of France. We've had this house for 3 years, and the back garden has been a mess for the past 3 years. And today I will have someone to come and work with me in the garden and clear it up. So for this summer, for the first time in 3 years, I'm going to have a beautiful flower and vegetable garden in my house.
Oh,
So that makes me very happy.
I love that, and I love that for you. I can imagine that would make me very happy too.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. This has been Juliette De La Rie, CEO and founder of Colorful Matter, which you can find at colorfulmatter.eu. Thank you so much for visiting Deep Pockets, Juliette.
Thank you so much, Petra. It was a true pleasure and so much fun to get to know you a little bit more and discover our commonalities.
You've listened to Deep Pockets with Petra Söderling, the show about government and innovation. If you liked today's episode, please subscribe, like, and share our show in your social media. It means a lot to me and to my guests. The wonderful music you heard is by a New Orleans Hall of Fame jazz icon Leroy Jones. Find this and other Leroy Jones tunes wherever you get your music. This podcast, as well as the recording of my audiobook, is done by Chris Elliott at Studio Agus in south of France. Get in touch with Chris to book studio time in our beautiful village. And why not come and taste the natural local wines from La Robina Winery while you're here. À votre santé!